Good afternoon, guys. Happy Tuesday to all of your sunshiny faces. The lighting in here is absolutely horrible. On top of that too, it's kind of late. I'm in here because I wanted to share with you guys something that I think is super cool. But I was telling you guys how in yesterday's vlog, we were going over to my aunt's house because she's downsizing. So we're going to look at a few things, and she had some stuff she wanted to ask us if we wanted. And we're most likely going to get like a sofa love seat set. That again too, she's not going to be taking with her. And so she was like asking us if we wanted that, and also too like a handful of other things that she like already definitely knows she wants to get rid of. But one of the other things too was that I told you guys how it was like close to a year ago, I think, we tried to get together so that like I could spend like a couple nights over at her house and go through all of her photos, because I had recently, I think within like a year, not a year, but like maybe 2 or 3 years ago, like from again to the time that she had asked me, it might have been like a year or two prior, I just ended up going through all of our photos, our family photos that we had, and ended up like reorganizing them and everything. And I was telling you guys how like we inherited a ton of pictures from like my grandma, and like when she moved in with us, because she lived with us for a while, and when she did, we ended up, you know, like she just brought all of her photos, and so then they just became our photos. And ever since she passed away, we just, you know, again, we've always had her photos ever since she moved in even. So finally though, like I said, just a couple of years ago, I was like, you know what, I'm gonna organize all of our photos. So they're all, again, two photos from like that range, like my grandma had pictures of like her grandparents and stuff like that, so like my great grandparents, and again too, ranging in, you know, like from all the way back then until, you know, again when I was born, and when, you know, again Matthew and Jack were born and stuff like that, along with my parents' photos, and also their photos too from like they were in high school and like, you know, that kind of thing. I don't know, my dad doesn't have as many like family photos. We have like a handful of photos. He doesn't have a lot. My mom has like a ton of photos, and maybe it's also too just kind of like more of a girl thing a little bit. Like my mom just probably took way more photos than my dad did. Also, so like my mom has tons of photos from like when she was in high school and like, you know, all that kind of stuff. But you know, like I said, we just have a ton of photos. And I told you guys how I'm huge into genealogy. Like I love history, but I'm also huge into genealogy as well. And like it started actually, I think right after my grandma passed away, when we ended up going through a ton of her stuff, and I saw that she was kind of into that as well. She'd written one of her like distant cousins and was like asking about certain like family, you know, information and stuff like that. And this was before the internet, like maybe back in the 70s or something like that, when she was kind of inquiring to one of our family, like I said, distant relatives, about more like family history from like that side of the family or whatever. And so again too, I thought that that was really interesting, and like I kind of used that as a jumping off point to like go through, like she had also papers that like, you know, like one of like my aunts might have done like some of the genealogy work and like put some things together based on like, you know, again that side of the family or whatever, and then like they would make like, you know, copies and then give it to like different family members. And my grandma had like some of those, so it was like maybe on my great grandpa's side of the family, and then like another one from like my great grandma's side of the family or whatever. And so I had a lot of that information. So again to now with modern technology, I was able to put a lot of that stuff in. Also too, my grandma had Xerox copies of the family Bible, which is like the holy grail of like where it seems like all of the information gets stored as to like when people were born and when marriages were, and you know, like that was the information in the record keeping and stuff like that, was everybody kept it in the family Bible. And so my grandma had copies of that, so that was also a really good like significant source of information to be able to use to then go through and just pop that kind of information into like Ancestry and find and make sure if those were like dates were, you know, correct in accordance to a lot of like actual like, you know, paper records and stuff like that. And 99% of it was. So as far as like backed up with, you know, actual, I guess, like government records. So like actual, you know, naturalization papers and birth certificates and like all that kind of stuff. And I can go really far back on our family tree on some sides. But I was telling you guys how again too, when I went over to my aunt's house, we were gathering up all the photos so that I can go through and organize all of her photos. And again too, she has so many old photos that I've never seen before that I, like I said, like you know, again too, for old photos, a significant stack, because like my grandma had like a tiny little stack of them. My aunt has so many more, and a lot of them too were like, because my aunt, who's my grandma's sister, she was born prior to the war, and then my grandma was born after. So there was a lot of pictures, like my mom was saying too, is probably that my great grandma was taking a lot of pictures with her and my aunt, and then sending them to my great grandpa, who was like overseas at the time. So there's tons and tons of pictures of like of her and my great grandma. But I wanted to show you guys a couple that I thought were really cool, and a couple that are insanely old, like almost pushing 100 years old. Like they're probably about 80 years old, and they look like they are actually the originals too. So one thing, the other thing, the huge thing that I want to make sure that I do on top of that too, in addition to organizing all of her photos, because she has them in like brown paper bags and boxes and shoe boxes and like all kinds of things. It's funny enough, I actually think we have more photos like from our, I think my aunt has probably done a better job of like at times gone through and just ended up getting rid of a lot of duplicates of pictures and stuff like that, because I have found very rare like that there's duplicates of like I've seen a lot of like when I was little, like my parents will have one and then they'll have like another like copy, you know, like they normally, if they got them developed, it was like in twos. So I feel like we had a lot more photos just because of that reason, whereas my aunt, it seems like she doesn't have that as much. So I'm not gonna say she has less photos than us, but I think that it was actually considerably close to the same amount of photos. But like I said too, we have all of my parents' photos along with my grandma's photos, whereas these are a lot of probably my great-grandparents' photos, like I said, some of the really old ones, which my grandma has a portion of as well, and then also to what my aunt has, which was probably some of my great-grandparents' photos, also some of my uncle's family's photos, which I was also telling you guys too recently, like when my aunt had passed away, who's not actually my aunt, she's my grandma's sister's husband. So again, to my aunt, who I'm doing, you know, organizing all these photos for, her husband's sister, who passed away in November, really close with her, and like my uncle's side of the family we're just very close with as well. And that, you know, we ended up like, we went to like a family party over, I think like 2 summers ago, maybe 2 or 3 summers ago or something like that. They had like a family reunion kind of party, like we went to, like me and my mom went. And again too, my aunt had just passed away in November, like we saw that whole side of the family. And again too, it's like not our family, but like they've always been in our family. And again too, going through these pictures, they've been involved in like all of our family events, for like, again to like birthdays, like they get invited to like somebody that's not even blood related to them, like they would come to those parties. Like it's a lot of extended family that we're just very close with, and you know, again to have been very close with. And like again too, as I'm going through all these pictures, it's just like kind of like, you know, chokes me up a little bit, because it's like we, you know, we have so many memories with like so much family that again too, you wouldn't maybe consider like family, but like they are family. And so like I said, that's the thing that's just really cool, and it's really, you know, like I said, it's sweet to go through all these pictures and just see that, like how much, you know, we care for them and they care for us kind of thing as well. That's why too though, it's funny because my mom has always also too been really close with like, again, my uncle's side of the family as well. So she was actually able to place like, again too, like, oh, this is Tanta so-and-so and this is Oma, and like that kind of stuff. And Oma's grandma in German and Tanta's aunt. On my uncle's side, they're German. My great-grandpa's side of the family is also German as well. I also told you guys how I'm learning German, so that also makes it kind of cool too, because actually, well, we were over at my aunt's house today too. She had this, I guess, like a game board thing that had a whole bunch of games. I think she bought it maybe when they went to Germany or something like that, because my aunt has done a lot of travels. As I'm going through her pictures, I can tell she has done a lot of traveling as well. Her and my uncle, and they have been a lot of places. And Germany and Ireland are 2 of the big ones, because again too, my great-grandma on, again, my grandma's side is Irish, and then my great-grandpa on my grandma's side, great-grandpa and great-grandma, but he is German. And then again too, on my uncle's side, who again too is my grandma's sister's husband, he's also German. And so again, going back to that though, they've done a lot of traveling, and some of that has been to places of their heritage. And my, like I said, my aunt, you know, they went to Germany and they ended up getting this like, you know, this board game was in Germany. And like my aunt though, she was like, the only problem is that when I got it, all of the instructions are in German. And I was like, oh, well, I can read it. And I was explaining how like my reading comprehension, I think I was telling you guys this too, is really good. As far as like speaking German, I don't feel like I have a very good German accent at all when I'm speaking it. So I don't necessarily like speaking all that much. But as far as, and like, I don't know if I, especially too when people talk really fast, I can't pick up on everything. But as far as reading goes, I can do pretty well at that. So like again too, I was reading through these instructions on how to actually play this game. And my aunt told me, she was like, if you want to take the book home so you can read it, because I do have like an old German book. It's like a really old book about how to play chess in German. Funny enough, I have 2 books about how to play like games in German. Anyways, but she ended up giving it to me to read so that I can learn how to play these board games that she ended up getting that she doesn't know how and was never able to learn how because the instructions were in German. On my, again, my uncle's side of the family, my mom was also really close with like, again, you know, was really close and knew a lot of my uncle's, you know, family and everything like that. So a lot of the pictures even too, she was able to place like some of the people and was like, oh yeah, like that's again so-and-so and whatever. And we were able to kind of figure it out. It again might have been more difficult had I just been doing it by myself, because I would have been like, I don't necessarily know. Like my mom has talked about them and stuff like that, so I kind of know. But again too, if I was just like reading it, I probably wouldn't have known. But like my mom knew like my uncle's like parents and stuff like that as well, and like his aunts and things like that. So, and like again too, I was telling you guys, like his sister, like I knew, like she came to all of our Christmas parties and like that kind of stuff too. So like all the pictures that have her in them, I've been able to place. I was like, I know that's her, I know that's her, like, you know. But it's just weird because like I don't have memories of her when she's like younger. And again too, we don't have a lot of pictures of her like when my, you know, like my grandparents would have been, you know, like before my mom was born, like with her in them and stuff like that. We don't have many pictures, so like I've very rarely seen like old pictures of her. So like seeing them, I'm like, oh my goodness, like that's her. Like, you know, she still has the same face, like, so it's very, like I can definitely tell that's her. Like I know, again, like, and can pick her out of the crowd. It's funny too, because like I was saying the exact same thing too about one of my uncles. I've seen very few pictures of him when he's young, but there's like some pictures of him from like in high school. It's like my, again, long like family tree, but my great grandma's sister's son, there's pictures too where I was like, I could pick him out of a crowd too. Like he does not look any different from like when he was in high school to like now. He still has like the same face. Like I could tell that was him. So anyways, like I said, it's really fun. I've been super enjoying it, and I actually got through the way I'm organizing them. I've gotten through like, let's just say the preliminary round of kind of organizing, where I've just sort of set out pictures, and like these are the really old ones, these are kind of the newer ones, these are like, you know, maybe around the time like my aunt and uncle and like my mom and stuff like that are like younger to like high school age. And then like the grandkid photos kind of I've been organizing, and like I said, really old photos as well, along with like travel photos. I've also kind of separated those as well, because those are also hard to date because a lot of times there's not a lot of people in them. Like my aunt took a lot of like scenery photos when they take, you know, would take vacations and travel and stuff like that. So those were a little bit more difficult to place, so I'm trying to keep those kind of separate as well. But ones with like people in them that I can probably place in more of a timeline, because that's where I'm going to try and organize, is in like timeline order, I guess, or like, you know, sort of do them by date as best as possible, is what I'm trying to do. So I do want to share with you guys, so like I said, those couple photos that I did find, because some of them are really old and like I said, really interesting. A couple of them too, actually I think all of them are like of my great-grandparents or my great-great-grandparents, which is actually really cool. Of course I'm gonna get a horrible glare because like I said, the lighting is horrible in here. But this one is probably, this one is the only one that I have dated, and this is probably the oldest photo that is dated. This is from 1937, and this is, from my understanding, and funny enough too, because there's actually a name in here, I believe is him, and he actually, from my understanding, if this is the same person, which I believe it is, because I was also able to place his wife, who's the one next to him, based on my ancestry, you know, information that I ended up doing, which is just from like the family tree that I have, was actually that he's going by his middle name in this photo, as far as what it says on the back. And I think that that's really cool, because like I said, by making sure that I knew that that was most likely his wife and was able to place that on the family tree, I'm like, yeah, that should be him. So this is actually my great grandma's side of the family. Yeah, my great grandma's like mom's side of the family, I believe. And they're the ones that I believe also came from Canada. So as my mom was also pointing out, this picture might have actually been in Canada and not in, maybe not though, because I think it was after my grandparents, like all of their kids though, like my great, this guy right here, he actually came from Canada, and when he did, all of his kids though were born in the US. None of them were born in Canada. So he most likely was born a Canadian citizen and then came to the US, and we actually have copies of his naturalization papers too. Like I said, that was like a whole bunch of the stuff that my grandma had, was like all copies of like that kind of stuff. And he came to Canada, but these are his, I think this is one of his sons down here at the bottom. So that's how I know that this most likely actually wasn't from Canada, but based on the time, it's like weird. This is also has to be a really old one as well, as you guys can tell. To me, this kind of screams like Great Depression era possibly, or slightly after that, but there's no date on this one. This would have been his wife's family. So that, like I said, is kind of the difference. This is also too my favorite photo. This is my photo of my great grandpa, and I think that he looks so insanely dapper there that it's just ridiculous with the pipe and the three-piece suit. And this is my favorite, has to be my favorite picture of my great grandpa. And you guys can see there too in the photo is my great grandma taking the picture with her shadow in the background, which I think is so cute. This one's also a pretty old picture as well. This one says it's from 39. So like I said, I don't know, this one to me though feels like maybe not that is older. This one I think is probably the oldest, but I don't have a date on this one, but it feels much older than this one. And like I said, this one's only actually a couple years difference than this one. And like I was telling you guys too, this one's my great grandpa. This would be his father-in-law. So this is actually a picture of my great grandpa's mom, and then that's her two brothers, I believe, on either side. And then these pictures, which again too I think are so cute, are the ones of my great grandparents' wedding. My great grandpa is definitely very happy in that picture. In this one, maybe a little bit more serious picture, but my great grandma, she also looks very happy in this one as well. And then this one is a picture of my great grandpa in his military uniform, and this one is also in his military uniform, but that's with my great grandma in that picture. So like I said, there's a ton of these kind of photos. These ones are the ones I think are just most interesting and probably tell the story the best as well. These ones are probably also the oldest, and these can kind of tell, like I said, like a range of, you know, again, different people in my family and stuff like that. And again too, it's really cool when I was actually able to go through, because I was like, I have no clue who this guy is. Like my mom's reading the name off and stuff like that, and I was like, you know what, I feel like I've heard that before, but not as a first name. And so when I went through, most likely what probably actually happened, because I think that there was like his mom's last name, like again too, a lot of times like the maiden name was given to like the son as a middle name a lot of times, and so he ended up most likely getting that as middle name, but went as his first name. So like I said, then when I was actually able to find out, oh yeah, also the name of the second person that's listed there, which is probably his wife he's standing next to, is the same as what I have in my, you know, ancestry tree, and was able to piece all that information together. So like I said, I love it. I love like genealogy, and to me it's like one big puzzle, and like to me this is like a mystery, finding out who these people are and being able to place them. And also kind of like I said, it's like placing the timeline and like, oh, when did this happen, and when was this picture taken, and like what were they doing here, and you know, like that kind of stuff. I just like pictures to me too, when they tell a story, and they tell, like I said, a story of a whole life, a whole family literally, because like I said, you can go back so far in some of these photos. It's so very cool to me. And like I said, I love it, and I love being able to like do this and like look at this kind of stuff too. There's also another thing that I thought was also insanely cool was, as you guys saw, the picture from my great grandparents' wedding. This was also from my great grandma's shower, which my aunt had. And it was the invitation for her shower, which I think is so cool. And when you look at it and you get to see like the time, it was apparently at 8 o'clock p.m. on August 15th, 1940. You know, and again, to the address and everything like that. And I'm assuming this is probably who was throwing the shower, which was her two sisters. Like I said, I think it's just so cool. Like, I love that kind of stuff. I am a huge nerd when it comes to history, but then when it's like family history, it just kind of like hits a little bit different and it makes it so real. So the huge thing that I'm going to make sure that I do, I don't know if I mentioned this, but one thing I want to make sure we do is like scan all of these and make sure that we have digital copies of them, because I think that that is so important, because again, too, things can happen and you can lose this kind of stuff. And again, too, things can happen to, you know, again, having, you know, digital photos as well, you can accidentally delete them. But again, too, I want to make sure that like I copy a lot of these and then also give them to like my cousins and other aunts and uncles and stuff like that too, that are related, you know, again, to these family members and stuff like that. Because, you know, again, too, maybe nobody has a photo of, like I said, this, you know, elusive picture of this family member that I ended up finding and figuring out who it was. They might not have that photo of him, and my aunt does, because, you know, again, too, it was my, you know, maybe my grandparents or my great-grandparents photo or whatever, and then my aunt had it, and now, you know, again, too, maybe that side of, you know, again, that, you know, distant relative doesn't have a photo of that person, and now they can. So like I said, I think that that's also a very important thing, and I think that like access to that is very important as far as like family goes, be able to have pictures of family as well. Like I said, and a handful of these I've never seen before. I've seen, again, a lot of them, or like my grandma has like some copies of them as well, or like certain pictures, like she might have a different photo from my great grandparents' like wedding, but like I might have not seen a couple of these. So again, I think that that's really cool, and that's what I've been up to, and I will probably be up to for the next handful of days, because this is probably going to take a lot of my time. But I love organizing things and photos, and like I said, it's just like all of the things that I love kind of all in one. But sitting here for too long, I can go stir crazy, so I do need to go and hop in the shower, get to bed, and I will finish working on this. Well, probably not finish, but get back to working on this tomorrow. So I'll see you guys all in tomorrow's vlog. If you guys did enjoy today's, make sure you guys give a big old thumbs up. If you guys are new, we'd love if you'd subscribe, and I'll see you guys all tomorrow. So bye, guys.